Hello, today we will discuss about human circulatory system, one of the most important organ system of our body. Previously we have already discussed about one of our system, that is your skeletal system. Now we will see how this circulatory system it is useful for generating different action potentials, how it is useful to providing information in healthcare or improving the healthcare or understanding our health. So, as we can see here in this first picture, it is a cross section, we can say it is a anatomical picture of one heart, of human heart. It has several chambers, one by one we will discuss, and this heart is made up of your myocardium, that muscles which builds up this heart, they are known as myocardium. Then this system basically it includes the fluid connective tissue, that is your blood, and this blood, as we have already discussed in our tutorial of tissues, that blood plays a vital role. Blood plays a vital role in our daily activity. So, this circulatory system it delivers nutrients, it also delivers hormones, it delivers hormones throughout our body. It also removes waste materials produced during the metabolism from every tissue. Then it provides one mechanism for regulating the temperature or to maintain the, or we know that homeostasis process, and it removes the heat generated by the metabolic activities from internal organs. As this, because all these functionalities are of blood, as in a circulatory system blood is an integral part, so the functionality of this system is also similar. You need to understand that every living cell in the body is a close proximity with small blood vessels. Actually what happens, our every cell requires oxygen and nutrients for their metabolism. So that can be done through the very small thin blood vessels known as capillaries. The capillaries, that they are very close proximity, they are actually surrounding they surround the every cell, and they are lining, the capillary lining or the blood vessels lining, or that your membrane lies very close in attachment with the every cell membrane. Through that there is an exchange of all these requirement, all these oxygen, all the waste materials, gases, nutrients, everything can be exchanged through those cell wall or cell membrane. So these blood vessels, they allows oxygen and carbon dioxide for exchange. Most of the small solutes they diffuse through across these two membranes, means the cell membrane of each cell and these capillaries of blood vessels, from the cell into the capillary or the capillary into the cell, in the both way. So this system, this circulatory system is otherwise known as cardiovascular system, because it is the main part or main organ is heart. So and All these things, they are the important, they are connected through this blood. So, blood is a complex, it is heterogeneous suspension of formed elements, the blood cells, or we call them hematocytes. They are suspended in a continuous drop fluid, colored fluid called plasma, and the hematocutes includes three basic types of cells. So, means this hematocutes means they are, what are the different types of cells present in your blood. So, they includes red blood cells or erythrocytes, or we sometimes call them RBCs. Similarly, white blood cells, leukocytes and platelets, so also known as thrombocytes. Hematocytes, these are the cells. Hematocytes are all derived from the red bone marrow from undifferentiated stem cells called hematoblasts. So, that means these hematoblasts, they are hematopoietic. From there, hematocyte cells are derived, and they leads to different types of cells, like different types of hematocutes like erythrocytes, leukocytes and thrombocytes, and all reach ultimate maturity via a process called hematocytopoiesis. So, maturity occurs through this process, hematocytopoiesis. So, these cells are the bone marrow, they are known as hematopoietic. They produce the all these hematocutes. And now coming to your structure of heart. Now you can see heart, actually it is one 4-chamber organ. It has 4 different chambers. 2 upper chambers are there and 2 lower chambers are there. Upper chambers are known as atrium. So, here you can mark in this picture, we have let me change the color. Okay. Now, you mark here, if we separate this upper one, we have right atrium, and similarly on the other side we have this left atrium. Similarly, here we have right ventricle, this part, and also left ventricle. So, 4 chambers are there, right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium and left ventricle, and they are separated by a septum. And we know that the heart is the main pumping system or pumping station that moves blood throughout through the blood vessels to all over our body, to each and every cell of our body. So, it consists of 2 pumps. One is left side pump, as we have all discussed, right atrium and right ventricle. Other side is left atrium and left ventricle. Okay. So, the right side, they actually receives blood from every part of our body. Those bloods are deoxygenated. Okay. Deoxygenated in terms, we can remember like that deoxygenated means they contains more carbon dioxide, and oxygenated means the partial pressure of oxygen is more concentration of oxygen in that blood. So, the right side moves deoxygenated blood that is loaded with carbon dioxide from the body to the lungs. So, that means from all of our every cell, all part of our body, the deoxygenated blood will be collected and poured into the right atrium, and then it will move to right ventricle. Then right ventricle will pump that blood to the lungs for purification or for the gas exchange, and at the site of gas exchange or respiration, through the process of respiration, the oxygen we inhale will be exchanged with the carbon dioxide present in the deoxygenated blood at alveoli in the lungs. So, these gases, now this purification, or now the blood we found after this process, we call that oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood again come back to the left atrium, and from that it will flow down to your left ventricle, and left ventricle will pump that blood to every part of our body. So, this actually you can mark, we have two different path or circulations. One is the blood is collected from all over the body, and again it is supplied to all over the body. Means it is collected from all over the body to heart, then from heart to all over the body. This circulation is known as systemic circulation. And other one is, other path of circulation is like from the heart to the lungs, and again after oxygenation from the lungs to heart. So, this path or this circulation is known as pulmonary circulation. So, we will see what next we have. Now, you mark here the vessels. Now, this according to this carriage of these bloods, whether it is oxygenated or deoxygenated, according that the nomenclature is different, or the blood carrying vessels we call, either we can categorize them into your arteries or we can call them veins. According to nomenclature, those blood vessels which carries blood from the body or from other part of the body to the heart, they are known as veins. And those blood vessels which carry blood from the heart or away from the heart, then they are known as, or we call them arteries. So, that means we have veins which carries or we brings blood to the heart, and we have arteries which brings the blood away from the heart. But here is one exception. The exception is that you mark here all the blood vessels all the deoxygenated blood. Now, we separate them, either we call them veins or we call them arteries. Okay. So, either vein or artery. So, basically blood which is bring to the heart, basically it is for that, those are your deoxygenated blood. Deoxygenated blood means that is carried through veins, and oxygenated blood means after purification, after oxygenation, that blood has to be supplied to all of the body. From that means it has to move away from heart, and the heart will pump that to all over the body. So, arteries will bring those, arteries will supply those oxygenated blood to all over the body. So, that means veins normally carries deoxygenated blood, arteries carries oxygenated blood. But the exception is that you can mark the red colors here in this picture. These red colors, they are carrying the oxygenated blood, and blue color pipes, they are indicating that they are carrying the deoxygenated blood. Now, through your inferior vena cava and superior vena cava, means veins. Those veins will bring blood from all over the body, means deoxygenated blood, and they pour that into the right atrium. Now from right atrium, those deoxygenated blood will move to this right ventricle, and right ventricle will pump that blood through this pulmonary arteries. Okay, because this is the only artery which contains deoxygenated blood. According to nomenclature, those blood vessels which can carry blood away from the heart is known as arteries, and in this case this deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle will pumped to the lungs, because this pulmonary arteries, they carries the deoxygenated blood. They are the only artery which carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. After oxygenation in the lungs, then again the oxygenated blood will come back to the left atrium, and now they come back to the left atrium through pulmonary veins. So you mark, we have pulmonary artery and pulmonary veins. So these are the left pulmonary veins, they carries the oxygenated blood. This is the only exception, that with this pulmonary veins, though those are veins, but still they contain the oxygenated blood, and once it will coming from the left atrium, then will flow down to your left ventricle, and left ventricle will pump those oxygenated blood all over the body through aorta. So you can have different aorta. So here we have aortic arch, we have left common carotid artery, similarly we have left subclavian artery, then we have brachiocephalic trunk. So these arteries, and this is your ascending aorta, and through these arteries all the bloods will flow, the oxygenated blood will supply to every part of our body. This is the mechanism of blood flow in human heart. Now over here you can also mark the myocardium, means the muscle of the heart. They are, those tissues, they are also supplied with blood, and they are also supplied with those blood, oxygenated blood. They supply, the supply is through left coronary artery and right coronary artery. This coronary artery, they are very thin, and they bring blood, oxygenated blood, and they supply that to the myocardium tissue. And now the blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart is called arteries, as we have already discussed, and the pulmonary artery is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Already we have discussed this thing. Now coming to the pressure. In this part, you can, in this picture you can mark. Now here in this picture, once this left side, this right atrium and left right ventricle, there is one gate or valve you can mark here, and similarly here another valve from right ventricle to lungs. Also we have another valve here at this place, it is from left atrium to left ventricle, and from left ventricle to aorta. So there are different valves. As we can mark that the deoxygenated blood, when it is supplied, when it is coming to the right ventricle has to pump that blood to lungs. So, the path is very short path and no need to press up, or it is not needing more pressure. And but in case of your left ventricle, we have to, that left ventricle really it is working hard to supply blood to all over the body. So, more pressure it has to exert. So, the right side of the heart does not work hard to drive the blood through the pulmonary circulation, and it basically the pressure is low. So, it is around 40 mercury millimeter mercury gauge, and pump compared to the left side, the heart, the ventricle is pumping with more blood and to the longer distances. So, it is 140 mmHg to drive the blood entire systemic circulation. So, this is the difference. You can mark why there is a difference in blood pressure, so that you can mark there. Now, here as we have discussed, we have different valves. So, in this right atrium to right ventricle, we have a tricuspid valve. 3 cup-shaped valves are there, that is why it is known as tricuspid valve. And similarly, here in between these two, in between the left atrium and left ventricle, we have a bicuspid valve, or we also call that mitral valve. Similarly, we have other two valves, pulmonary valve and aortic valve. You can see here pulmonary valve is in between right ventricle to this pulmonary artery, and your left ventricle to the aorta we have aortic valve. So, these are the 4 different types of valves. They are opening and closing, and they are regulating the blood flow direction during pumping. Oxygenated blood leaves the heart through the aorta. Some of the blood is sent to the head and upper extremities and torso, whereas the remainder goes to the lower torso and extremities. The blood leaves the aorta and moves into other arteries. Arteries then become smaller, we call them arterioles, and finally these arteriole leads to capillary beds, where they are the capillary beds are the real site for nutrient, hormone, gas, waste product exchange between the cell and the blood vessel. The blood moves from the capillary bed into the venules. From the capillary means the deoxygenated blood again collected through capillary net, and then they will lead to your venules, very thin veins. Then the venules will move to veins, and blood from the upper part of the body return to the right atrium of the heart through superior vena cava, and whereas blood from the lower part of the body returns through the inferior vena cava. The blood then moves from the right atrium to the right ventricle and into the pulmonary system through the pulmonary artery. And already we discussed that this pulmonary artery, though it is called artery, but it contains deoxygenated blood. After passing through the capillaries in the lungs, the oxygenated blood returns to the left atrium of the heart through the pulmonary vein. This is the only vein which contains the oxygenated blood. It moves from the left atrium to the left ventricle and then out of the systemic circulation through the aorta to begin the same trip over and again. So, every cycle it completes one cycle, this process. Now, coming to the two processes, one is your filling phase, another one is your emptying phase of heart. So, that is filling phase is known as diastole and emptying phase is known as systole. So, depending upon that diastole and systole, the pressure varies in our heartbeat or heart pumping action. The left atrium is the smallest chamber according to the capacity. holding capacity. At rest it can hold up to 45 milliliter of blood, and the pouch shaped right atrium is next to that. It can store at least 63 milliliter of blood, then followed by conical shaped left ventricle. Left ventricle, it can contain up to 100 milliliter of blood at rest, and the crescent shaped right ventricle, it contains the maximum size is a right ventricle. So, it can contain 130 milliliter of blood at rest. Actually, every cardiac cycle takes 750, around 750 millisecond. So, this 750 millisecond is divided into two phases. One phase is your filling phase or diastole. This diastole process, it takes at least 480 millisecond. So, the inlet valve of the two ventricles means tricuspid valve and from right atrium to the right ventricle, and bicuspid or mitral valve from the left atrium to the left ventricle are open at this phase. And the outlet valves means that is your pulmonary valve and aortic semilunar valves, they are closed at the filling phase. The heart ultimately expands to its end diastolic volume maximum, because the blood is entering into it is coming to the heart and it is filling the heart. So, it will fill up to its maximum capacity, that ends diastolic volume EDV, which is on the order of 140 milliliter of blood for the left ventricle. So, EDV is 140 milliliter, end diastolic volume. Then the emptying phase. Emptying phase, that as we have already discussed, that diastole takes, or the filling phase takes 480 millisecond, and the emptying phase it takes 270 millisecond. We call that systole. An electrical induced vigorous contraction. Electrical induced means we have one action potential generated that will trigger this pumping action or contraction process of the cardiac muscles, that drives the intraventricular pressure up, which forces the one-way inlet valve close, and the unidirectional outlet valve as we have discussed, that is your pulmonary and aortic, those valves will open as the heart contracts to its end systolic volume, that we have discussed. End diastolic volume is 140 milliliter. Now, here this pressure, due to the pressure, now the ventricle, the left ventricle and right ventricle both contract at a time, and they will empty the ventricle, and we will get our end systolic volume UESB, which is typically on the order of 70 milliliter of blood for the left ventricle. So, after contraction, the left ventricle contains 70 milliliter. So, the difference, every stroke, every pumping action, it creates one difference in the end diastolic volume and end systolic volume, that is known as stroke volume. So, the difference among them is known as stroke volume, which is actually 70 milliliter of blood. And now from that we can calculate the total cardiac output, that is CO. The formula lies like that is this total cardiac output equals to your heart rate times stroke volume. So, if a normal person, if a normal adult, the heart rate is we know that it is 72 times per minute, and your stroke volume we get it as 70 milliliter of blood. So, we can multiply that, we are getting around 5 liter. Okay. So, that amount of blood is pumping per stroke, that is your total cardiac output. The cardiac cycle is repeating pattern of contraction of systole and relaxation, that is diastole, of the chamber of the heart. It begins with a self-generating electrical pulse or trigger that we call natural pacemaker. The cell, it starts from sinoatrial node. Sinoatrial node, from where it starts, and after every 0.83 seconds it will start again. This trigger or this action potential will generate after every, or it will repeat after 0.83 seconds, and it starts from SA node of our heart, which is present on the right atrium. This gives at rest heart rate of 72 beats per minute. So, we will see how this electrical conduction takes place in our body, in our heart. So, the electrical signal conduction path is like this. It will start from this point as it is shown here, SA node or sinoatrial node. Then this signal will travel to the atrioventricular node. So, this part is your atrioventricular node. Then from this atrioventricular node through Purkinje fiber or Purkinje system, it will travel or it will spread the whole muscles or complete heart. It will spread all over the heart through this Purkinje fiber, and it ends at this bundle of hairs. So, these are the electrical signal conduction path. Now, we will see what happens to this action potential or this ECG. We can measure that through ECG, electrocardiogram. So, that curve will that represents the depolarization and repolarization of atria and ventricles. So, we mark here this curve is starting from P, and this P wave is a depolarization of atria in response to SA node triggering. Then from that we will have a delay in AV node to allow filling of the ventricle. Then after this delay, once this filling of ventricle occurs, then a QRS, complex action potential, is generated that depolarizes the ventricle and trigger the main pumping contraction. Once this QRS action potential is generated, the ventricle starts contracting and your systole phase started. Okay. Then we have a ST segment that begin the ventricle repolarization, and after that the T wave represents the ventricular repolarization, and again this process started. Within that we will get some time to the repolarization of atrium, and again it starts again, and once it will repeat and repeat like that. So, this is the process through which the electrical contraction is controlled by this heart contraction is controlled by this electrical action potential started from this or generated from the self generated signal which generated from sinoatrial node. If it fails, then we have to use an artificial pacemaker to trigger that, to generate that trigger. Then coming to cardiovascular disorders. So, the heart related disorders is known as cardiovascular disorder. Sometimes a cerebrovascular accident or stroke that result when an embolus lodges in a cerebral blood vessel or a cerebral blood vessel bursts, then what will happen? A portion of the brain dies due to lack of oxygen. As you can mark, this part due to the lack of due to the burst in the clot or anything in the brain, or an embolus is entering into that blood vessel, that it is blocked, that blood vessel is blocked, so that the oxygenated blood is not reaching at that point of brain. So, it becomes that due to lack of oxygen, the brain, that portion of the brain cells dies, and this is called stroke. Then coming to a myocardial infarction, or that is known as heart attack. It occurs when a portion of the heart muscle dies due to lack of oxygen. This infarction takes place if the coronary arteries, they are blocked and they cannot carry the oxygenated blood to that part of the tissue of the myocardium. Okay. So, this is known as your, we in general we call that heart attack, and basically it is in medical terms they call it myocardial infarction. Then we have atherosclerosis is due to the buildup of fatty metal like plaque. They make that valves or arteries harder, or mainly cholesterol under that inner lining of artery, in the coronary artery, they block that. This plaque block those blood flow. The plaque can cause a thrombus or blood clot to form. This is known as atherosclerosis. Then we have another disorder which is a normal, means it is like many of the adults have this disorder, that is your hypertension. When the systolic pressure is more than 140 and diastolic pressure is more than 100, then with this particular measurement or your is known as hypertension. Other things we can have cardiac arrhythmia. Cardiac arrhythmia means the signal which is generated, that action potential generated for this triggering this contraction, they are spread over and they are not in a sync. The path is not in a sync or synchronization. So, heart is not perfectly getting that signal, means that synchronization is not in between the polarization and depolarization and repolarization of this atria and ventricle, that it is your cardiac arrhythmia. Similarly, we have some diseases that occurs due to heart failure, occurs due to dilated ventricle. Dilated means the ventricle wall, they become narrow or thin. So, the pressure, the systolic pressure reduces and pumping action affected. So, that is also lead to heart failure. We have some deposition of fat or cholesterol, fat deposition in arteries, that also called blockage. They can be deposited under valves to make them harder. So, you require a valve replacement. So, many challenges are there in or many disorders are there. So, that is in our in this type of, they are known as cardiovascular diseases. Now, we have angioplasty. Use a long tube thread through an arm or leg vessels to the point where the coronary artery is blocked. To remove that, this process is known as angioplasty, and they put that through any arm or leg vessels, and that at that point you can mark here. Here this will enter, this is your blockage, artery is blocked due to the deposition of your cholesterol. So, now here you have this balloon, metallic, that arterial walls. Now, the balloon is inflated. As it is inflated, so there is a path. Now, the small metal stent are expanded inside the artery to keep it open. Stent are coated with a heparin to prevent blood clotting and with chemicals to prevent arterial closing. In some cases, here you can mark plaque deposition. Along with that plaque deposition, we have also some thrombosis. So that area is now dead. So this is your area of blocked blood vessels or blood flow in the heart or heart tissue. A coronary bypass operation involved removing a segment of another blood vessel and replacing a clogged coronary artery. If this type of artery is clogged or it cannot carry the blood to that part, so what happens? We can bypass that, removing that part, and we can use another part like this one. This is a grafted vein carry arterial bloods. So this one, these are bypass. Okay. So next, in this case you can mark multiple number of triggers are there. Heart is not pumping the blood because the sequence breaks. As the synchronization breaks, the pumping action is not there. So this is known as cardiac arrest, sudden cardiac arrest due to arrhythmia. So this is all about cardiovascular system. Thank you.